What if I told you that medieval peasants might have lived healthier, longer lives than many of us do today, all because they were secretly munching on weeds you're probably spraying to death in your backyard right now? Plants so powerful they've become modern-day superfoods worth more than your monthly gym membership, and whose secrets modern medicine definitely doesn't want you to know. Welcome to the wild world of medieval superfoods, ancient remedies and forgotten plants that turned Europe's poorest farmers into survival machines despite having zero access to hospitals' antibiotics or even a decent toothbrush. Because while we complain about kale smoothies or pay $20 for a tiny bottle of organic green juice, medieval peasants were out there battling stinging plants, bare-handed boiling roots they dug up with their own calloused fingers, and transforming what we'd now call weeds into natural medicine cabinets, brimming with vitamins, minerals, and disease-fighting powers. They didn't just survive, they thrived, powered by nature's hidden history, all while modern folks today are busy killing those same plants with weed killer, totally oblivious they're wiping out a backyard pharmacy that could save them thousands of dollars in supplements and doctor bills. In this video, I'm going to reveal the medieval secrets. Modern medicine doesn't want you to know the forgotten wild edible plants that kept entire villages alive through plagues, famines, and brutal winters, and the powerful herbs so rich in nutrients they'd make any modern health influencer weep with envy. So get ready for a medieval journey through the ultimate ancient natural medicine cabinet, where stinging nettle elderberries, burdock root beetroot, dandelion cabbage flax, sorrel barley, and lamb's quarters aren't just random plants. They're the hidden superfoods that helped medieval peasants live longer and healthier lives than history ever gave them credit for. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you might never look at your backyard or your local weed killer the same way again. Now buckle up, because we're diving headfirst into the medieval natural medicine cabinet, where ordinary weeds turn into extraordinary superfoods that modern science is only just catching up with. And I'm about to walk you through 10 powerful plants that medieval peasants used to stay healthy, strong, and sometimes even outlive the nobility, all without ever stepping foot inside a pharmacy or shelling out for overpriced health supplements. From stinging nettles that bite back but secretly pump your body full of iron and vitamins, to elderberries that became medieval Europe's answer to viral outbreaks centuries before anyone knew what a virus was. Every one of these forgotten plants has a wild story and shocking benefits that'll make you question why we've spent so many years trying to kill them off. And trust me, the last plant on this list might just blow your mind with how insanely nutritious it is, and how it's probably growing right outside your house this very moment, waiting for someone brave enough to harvest it instead of spraying it dead. So stick around, because the secrets modern medicine doesn't want you to know are about to unfold, and you're not going to want to miss a single leafy detail. Let's kick off this medieval superfoods tour with a plant so hardcore it's basically nature's medieval ninja. And if you've ever accidentally brushed against it, you know exactly why stinging nettle was both feared and worshipped by peasants who didn't have luxury items like gloves or Benadryl lying around, because this fierce green warrior is armed with tiny hair-like needles that inject a stinging cocktail of histamine and formic acid sharp enough to make you yelp and rethink your life choices. But here's the wild twist. Medieval peasants didn't just avoid it, they actually hunted it down. Because once you drop these spiky leaves into boiling water, they transform from enemy combatant into a supercharged natural remedy, packed with iron, calcium, vitamin A, vitamin C, and enough nutrition to make modern dietitians swoon, turning a humble weed into a medieval jackpot for people whose daily meals were mostly just bread and water. And honestly, imagine surviving harsh winters fueled by a plant. Most of us would nuke with weed killer without a second thought. Which is why stinging nettle wasn't just a vegetable. It was medieval Europe's secret weapon against iron deficiency, fatigue, and joint pain, often brewed into potent herbal teas or tossed into hearty stews. And get this, some clever folks even spun nettle fibers into fabric, proving that medieval peasants were masters of turning pain into practicality. Centuries before sustainability was a hashtag. So next time you complain about your kale smoothie, remember, these tough-as-nails farmers were basically grabbing spiky plants with bare hands and calling it lunch. And here's the kicker. Modern herbalists still hail nettle as a natural superfood, and chances are it's growing somewhere near you right now, silently waiting for a brave soul to harness its power. But hold that thought, because if you think stinging nettle's fierce reputation is wild, Just wait until you hear about the dark purple berry medieval peasants trusted more than any doctor. When winter illnesses came knocking, and it might just be your new favorite cold remedy if you're brave enough to give it a taste. Now brace yourself, because if medieval peasants had a ride-or-die plant when cold and flu season rolled in, it was hands down the mighty elderberry, those dark purple clusters of tiny berries that medieval families basically treated like liquid gold. And for good reason. Because when the medieval world got slammed by fevers, coughs, and mysterious plagues that no one could explain, they didn't rush off to pharmacies because, well, pharmacies didn't exist. Instead, they trusted nature's hidden history and turned to elderberry, a powerhouse of natural medicine so potent that modern scientists are still geeking out over how these tart little berries can actually shorten the duration of viral infections and give your immune system a serious boost. And here's the kicker. Medieval peasants were already onto this centuries before anyone had even uttered the word virus, gathering entire baskets of elderberries during the late summer harvest. Their fingers stained a royal purple from the juice as they cooked them down into thick, dark syrups mixed with honey, creating a natural remedy that was not only deliciously tangy, but shelf-stable enough to last through the dead of winter. And while fresh elderberries were way too sour and slightly toxic to eat raw, once simmered into syrup, they transformed into a medieval version of modern immune support shots, except without the plastic bottles or $30 price tags. And imagine knowing that every time someone in your village started sniffling or coughing, there was no panic, just a quick trip to the pantry for elderberry syrup, the original ancient remedy for viral outbreaks rich in vitamin C and antioxidants that helped medieval folks stave off the horrors of scurvy and keep their bodies strong through brutal winters. So the next time you see elderberry supplements lining the shelves at your local health store for ridiculous prices, remember, medieval peasants were basically brewing the same stuff in clay pots with nothing but berries and honey, proving once again that sometimes the best secrets modern medicine doesn't want you to know were growing wild all along. But hold that thought, because if you think elderberries were impressive, wait until you discover the deep, earthy treasure. Medieval peasants dug out from beneath their feet a root so powerful, it was practically medieval CrossFit for your digestive system. And trust me, you've probably walked right past it without even realizing the gut health goldmine hiding underground. Alright, get ready, because we're about to go underground literally to uncover a medieval superfood that modern wellness gurus should probably be shouting from the rooftops, because burdock root, known in medieval times as one of the ultimate hidden heroes of natural medicine, was the earthy secret weapon medieval peasants dug from beneath their feet, even if it meant busting their backs with primitive tools just to wrestle these long, gnarly roots out of the stubborn soil. And while it might not look glamorous, this rugged brown root was packed with powerful compounds that turned it into the medieval Swiss Army knife of health, loaded with inulin, a special prebiotic fiber that modern nutritionists are obsessed with because it feeds good bacteria in your gut, keeping digestion humming and your immune system on high alert, which means medieval peasants were accidentally practicing cutting-edge gut health centuries before we even knew the microbiome existed. And let's be real, they were basically doing medieval CrossFit, hauling burdock roots out of the ground 2 feet deep, except their reward wasn't a protein shake or a gym selfie. It was adding a deeply earthy flavor to their soups, broths, and stews, transforming humble vegetable dishes into hearty meals that could satisfy even on days when meat was just a distant memory. And here's a fun fact to blow your mind. Medieval healers believed burdock root could purify the blood and keep skin issues at bay. And while they might not have known the science, modern studies confirm burdock is packed with antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties that could give your expensive skincare routine a serious run for its money. And what's even wilder is that this so-called weed grew almost anywhere along roadsides, near cottages, and in forgotten corners of medieval villages, meaning medieval peasants didn't have to pay a dime for what modern health stores now sell as a premium superfood. So next time you stroll past a patch of weeds without a second glance, remember there could be a powerful ancient remedy hiding right beneath your feet, waiting to be unearthed and rediscovered. But don't go anywhere, because if you think burdock root's medieval superpowers are impressive, just wait until you hear about the vibrant red vegetable that turned medieval kitchens into crime scenes and secretly became the original pre-workout supplement for peasants who needed stamina to survive another day. Now let's paint the medieval world red, literally. Because if there was ever a vegetable that turned medieval kitchens into crime scenes and made peasants look like they just committed murder every time they chopped it up, it was beetroot, the vivid red powerhouse that medieval folks might not have scientifically understood but absolutely recognized for the burst of energy and stamina it gave them long before anyone ever dreamed up fancy words like nitrates or pre-workout supplements, because when you've been swinging tools, hauling wood, and working the fields from dawn till dusk, you need every bit of help you can get. And medieval peasants figured out that this earthy, jewel-toned root wasn't just pretty. It was a stealthy weapon for surviving harsh winters and grueling physical labor packed with iron that was crucial for keeping blood strong, especially for women who were often iron deficient and constantly at risk of anemia. And the coolest part is that beetroot was basically medieval performance nutrition, improving blood flow and oxygen delivery, even though no one back then could have told you a thing about nitric oxide pathways. Yet modern science now confirms that beetroot juice can boost endurance, lower blood pressure, and help your heart run smoother than a medieval cart on fresh wheels. And let's not forget, medieval peasants were pragmatic geniuses when it came to storage, because beetroot kept beautifully in cool root cellars for months, providing a reliable stash of vitamins and minerals deep into the cold season, when fresh veggies were just a distant dream. And sure, the side effect of turning your urine pink or red probably caused a few medieval health panics before folks realized it was harmless. But even so, beetroot's vibrant color was almost like medieval candy, a rare sweet reward in a world where treats usually meant a crust of slightly fresher bread. So, next time you spot beetroot at the market, remember you're holding the same natural performance booster that helped medieval peasants outlast brutal seasons and stay strong against the odds. But don't go anywhere, because if you think beetroot was impressive, just wait until you meet the humble plant. Medieval peasants turned into wine, coffee, and medicine all at once, a bright yellow survivor that modern folks spend good money trying to annihilate from their lawns, completely clueless. It's one of nature's most democratic and resilient superfoods. All right, let's talk about the ultimate underdog of the medieval superfoods world. The plant modern homeowners spend half their lives waging chemical warfare against, while medieval peasants practically threw it a party, because the humble dandelion wasn't just some annoying yellow weed popping up in your perfectly manicured lawn. It was a full-fledged medieval grocery store, pharmacy, and winery rolled into one. A bright burst of golden petals that medieval kids would gather by the handfuls, not to blow into the wind for fun like we do today, but to transform into sweet golden syrups, or even a surprisingly potent homemade wine that probably made medieval dinner parties a whole lot more interesting. And while the flowers were a sweet treat, it was the dandelion leaves that were pure green gold to medieval peasants desperate for fresh vegetables after long winters of surviving on bread, because these leaves were loaded with vitamin K, vitamin A, calcium, and antioxidants that modern nutritionists now rave about for bone health and vision. And the beauty of it was that medieval cooks could eat the tender young leaves raw in spring salads, or toss older bitter leaves into soups and stews for a nutrient bomb that made even the blandest peasant meal a bit more exciting. And let's not forget the roots, which medieval peasants dug up, cleaned, roasted until they were dark brown and ground into a bitter drink. That was basically the original medieval alternative to coffee centuries before hipsters were paying $5 for fancy lattes. And what's mind-blowing is that dandelions were and still are virtually indestructible, thriving in poor soil drought and relentless foot traffic, proving themselves the most democratic plant on earth because they grow equally well for kings and peasants alike. So next time you curse the yellow dots taking over your lawn, remember, medieval peasants saw them as free medicine, free greens, and even free booze. But hang tight, because if you think dandelions were impressive, wait until we dig into the sturdy vegetable that became the medieval equivalent of a reliable old truck, keeping peasants alive and healthy through the harshest winters, and even launching an accidental probiotic revolution centuries before anyone knew the word microbiome. Now buckle up, because we're rolling into the medieval superfood that deserves a medal for reliability. A vegetable so humble yet so mighty that peasants basically treated it like the medieval equivalent of a dependable old truck that always starts even on the coldest mornings, because cabbage wasn't just a crunchy green ball of leaves. It was an absolute lifesaver when icy winds were howling and nothing fresh dared poke its head out of the ground. And while medieval peasants loved cabbage fresh from the fields during harvest, the real magic happened when they discovered the transformational power of fermentation, turning plain old cabbage into sauerkraut, the medieval superfood that accidentally launched a probiotic revolution hundreds of years before anyone knew the word microbiome, because medieval families would gather around enormous wooden tubs shredding cabbage into fine ribbons, sprinkling salt, and packing it all down until nature took over and friendly bacteria went to work, creating a tangy, crunchy, vitamin-packed treasure that could last for months in cool storage. And trust me, when the alternative was scurvy bleeding gums and feeling like you'd been run over by a medieval ox cart sauerkraut was the difference between barely surviving and actually thriving through the bitter winter months. And let's not forget that cabbage, fresh or fermented, was loaded with vitamin C fiber and compounds that modern science now links to fighting inflammation, supporting heart health, and even lowering cancer risks, proving that medieval peasants were unknowingly practicing cutting-edge nutrition centuries before modern diet trends slapped fancy labels on it. And sure, cooking cabbage could sometimes make your entire cottage smell like a medieval locker room. But medieval cooks became masters of balancing cooking time and airflow to keep things tolerable. Because when you're living in a drafty hut with no air fresheners, that's just the price you pay for staying alive and healthy. So the next time you fork into a plate of sauerkraut or crunch down on a cabbage salad, remember, you're tapping into the same survival wisdom that kept medieval peasants going strong through snow, famine, and plague. But don't go anywhere, because if you think cabbage was versatile, wait until you hear about the tiny brown seeds. Medieval peasants prized for both food and fashion a plant so multifunctional it could keep you fed, keep your gut happy, and even dress you head to toe in medieval chic. Now get ready for the medieval superfood that might just be the original definition of multitasking, because flax was the plant that didn't just show up to feed medieval peasants but practically offered to clothe them too, like the ultimate overachiever in the medieval botanical world, because those tiny brown seeds hiding inside flax pods were absolute nutritional gold mines bursting with omega-3 fatty acids, fiber, and powerful lignans that modern health gurus rave about for fighting inflammation, balancing hormones, and keeping hearts ticking like well-oiled medieval clockwork. And medieval peasants were unknowingly ahead of every modern nutrition trend by tossing ground flax seeds into their bread dough porridge, or even sprinkling it over dishes to stretch nutrition further and keep hunger at bay longer. And while they probably had no idea they were consuming one of the richest plant sources of healthy fats, their bodies were reaping the benefits. From smoother digestion to better energy levels. And here's where flax goes full medieval superhero. It wasn't just food, it was fashion, because medieval families would soak, beat, comb, and spin flax fibers into linen cloth so fine that it clothed everyone from peasants in humble tunics to royalty lounging in breezy gowns, proving that flax was the medieval version of a sustainable zero-waste lifestyle, centuries before hashtags like eco-friendly were cool. And though processing flax into linen was backbreaking work that would make modern complaints about laundry day look like child's play, it was worth it, because one crop could nourish families and fill their wardrobes all at once, saving precious land space and making peasants masters of efficiency long before minimalism became a trendy aesthetic. So next time you see flax seeds at the health store being marketed as premium superfoods with shiny labels and high price tags, remember, medieval peasants were getting those same benefits straight from their backyard fields without even realizing how ahead of their time they really were. But stay tuned, because if you think flax was impressive, wait until you meet the vibrant green plant that medieval cooks treated like nature's flavor bomb, a tart, sharp herb that turned bland medieval soups into culinary surprises and just might have been the original secret weapon against scurvy. All right, it's time to pucker up, because if there was one medieval superfood that could single-handedly snap your taste buds awake and transform a bland medieval soup into a culinary masterpiece, it was sorrel, the zesty green plant that medieval peasants practically treated like nature's secret spice rack, bursting with a sharp lemony tang thanks to its natural oxalic acid, the same compound that gives lemons their legendary pucker power. And while medieval folks might not have known the chemical name, they absolutely understood that tossing a handful of fresh sorrel into a bubbling cauldron of vegetable broth was like flipping on a light switch in a gloomy medieval kitchen. And what's incredible is that this unassuming green wasn't just about flavor. It was a bona fide medieval lifesaver loaded with vitamin C at a time when scurvy was lurking around every dark medieval corner, ready to strike anyone who went too long without fresh produce. So medieval peasants could keep their gums intact and their bodies strong, all because of this little green hero. And let's be honest, Sorrel was probably the closest thing medieval folks had to a fast food fix, since it could be plucked fresh right from the field, eaten raw on the spot, or quickly chopped into a salad or soup without any fancy prep. And kids loved to snack on the leaves straight from the plant, treating them like nature's sour candy. Except instead of rotting their teeth, they were boosting their immune systems, and even modern chefs have rediscovered sorrel, featuring it in fancy dishes at high-end restaurants, where a handful of these wild leaves can suddenly cost a small fortune, proving once again that medieval peasants were unknowingly the original farm-to-table foodies long before it was fashionable or hashtag-worthy. So the next time you're looking for a way to jazz up a soup or avoid paying $15 for a tiny microgreen garnish, remember that sorrel might be growing in your own backyard, just waiting to make your taste buds dance and your body thank you for the vitamin C boost. But stay tuned, because if you thought sorrel was impressive, wait until you discover the grain that was the medieval answer to slow-release energy bars, the humble powerhouse that fueled peasants through long days of brutal labor, and even helped brew one of humanity's greatest inventions, beer. Now let's raise a medieval toast to barley, the quiet hero of medieval superfoods that might not have been flashy or exotic, but was the rock-solid backbone of peasant survival, because if grains were people, wheat might have been the popular kid everyone swooned over. But barley was the reliable best friend who always showed up, helped you move and kept you fed when times got tough, and medieval peasants adored barley precisely because it could thrive where other grains simply threw in the towel, surviving poor soil, wild weather swings, and the kind of primitive farming tools that would make any modern gardener cry. And here's the brilliance: barley wasn't just filling. It was functional, loaded with beta-glucan fiber that modern science now knows helps lower cholesterol, balance blood sugar, and keep your digestive system working like a finely tuned medieval catapult. Which means medieval folks were accidentally practicing the original slow-release energy diet centuries before any sports drink brand started bragging about sustained fuel. And while barley porridge might sound humble, it was a hearty, satisfying meal that gave peasants the stamina to swing hammers, haul stones, and toil in fields from sunrise to sunset. And let's not forget barley's role in what might be humanity's greatest invention after fire and the wheel, beer, because medieval brewers turned barley into liquid nutrition, a beverage often safer to drink than water, and packed with enough calories to keep people going during lean times. And honestly, who wouldn't appreciate a medieval multitasker that could be both dinner and happy hour all in one? And medieval healers even made barley water, boiling the grains into a mild, easy-to-digest drink used to help people recover from illness, proving barley was not just food, but a gentle medieval remedy. And while modern pantries still stock barley for soups and stews, medieval peasants saw it as insurance against famine, a grain that could be dried and stored for months without spoiling. So next time you stir barley into your pot or sip on a cold beer, remember you're carrying on a tradition of survival and hidden history that stretches back centuries. But don't go anywhere, because if you thought barley was impressive, wait until you meet the wild green that medieval peasants treated like a hidden treasure, a so-called weed, so nutritious it blows modern superfoods out of the water and just might be growing in your yard this very minute. All right, prepare to have your mind officially blown, because we've saved one of the medieval superfood heavyweights for last. And trust me, lamb's quarters is the ultimate proof that sometimes the best things in life really are free. Because while modern people pay top dollar for fancy organic greens packaged in glossy plastic clamshells, medieval peasants were out there foraging this so-called weed from roadside ditches, field edges, and basically anywhere humans dared to walk, turning it into one of the most powerful and nutrient-dense wild edible plants ever to grace a medieval stew pot. Because lamb's quarters wasn't just some random green leaf. It was practically medieval spinach on steroids, loaded pound for pound with more iron, calcium, protein, and vitamin A than even Popeye could dream of. And the medieval genius was in recognizing that while carefully tended crops might fail under harsh weather or disease, lamb's quarters kept stubbornly popping up no matter what, making it the ultimate survival insurance for families who couldn't afford to gamble their lives on a single harvest. And the leaves could be eaten raw when young and tender, tossed straight into salads or soups, while the seeds, tiny and quinoa-like, could be harvested for an extra dose of protein and energy. meaning medieval peasants were accidentally enjoying a plant-based protein boost centuries before vegan influencers ever started flooding Instagram feeds with superfood hashtags, and modern science now confirms that lamb's quarters is one of the most nutritionally dense wild foods on the planet, proving that medieval peasants were getting premium superfood benefits from what we'd consider backyard weeds. And let's be honest, the idea that this humble weed could help stave off iron deficiency, keep bones strong, and boost overall health makes it downright criminal. How many people today blast it with herbicide without ever realizing they're killing their own hidden history and natural medicine cabinet? So the next time you spot a patch of diamond-shaped leaves dusted with that telltale white underside, remember you're looking at a plant that medieval peasants counted on for survival and modern science calls a superfood superstar. But stay right here, because we're about to wrap this medieval adventure up. And I've got one last surprise waiting in the outro that ties all these ancient remedies and hidden superfoods into one powerful lesson you definitely don't want to miss. So here's the wild truth, my friend. While we're out here spending small fortunes on fancy supplements, trendy health shots, and organic superfoods wrapped in shiny labels, medieval peasants were surviving wars, famines, and brutal winters, armed with nothing but the weeds growing at their feet, transforming plants most of us mindlessly kill with weed killer into a hidden arsenal of natural medicine and nutrition that modern science is only now starting to catch up with. And maybe the biggest secret modern medicine doesn't want you to know is that the ultimate superfoods might be free stubborn and sprouting right outside your door. And let's be real, how mind-blowing is it that something as simple as lamb's quarters or nettle could give you more nutrients than a pricey smoothie bar ever could, proving that sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight. So the next time you walk past a patch of so-called weeds, don't just see a nuisance, see a medieval pharmacy, a survival kit, a piece of hidden history waiting to remind us that nature always had our backs. And if this medieval wisdom sparked even a tiny spark of curiosity in you, drop me a comment, telling me which of these plants you'd actually dare to try or which one shocked you the most. Save this video so you'll never forget nature's secrets lurking in your backyard, and hit that subscribe button because we've barely scratched the surface of the hidden history and powerful herbs that modern life wants us to forget. And trust me, the next medieval secrets I've got lined up might just change how you see the entire natural world, so why not stick around and be the first to know?